Hi everybody, this is Tiffany, and this video today will show you how to get started with a do file and how to set up. So what exactly is a do file? So your do file is your workspace in Stata. It's a way for you to write and keep all of your analyses and all your steps, basically all of your code, just on the same place here so that you can replicate your data and you can rerun things and have a storage and a record of what is going on. What this do file does, it should be containing all of your codes so that every step of your analysis is documented. That means from the very beginning, when you start to clean your data, then you go into analysis, maybe you're making tables. All of that should always be done in a do file so that everything is documented and stored. The purpose of the do file is so that anyone else can get the exact same results if they run your do file using the same data set. People should be able to replicate exactly what you are doing in your do file. So this is what the do file looks like. It's this one right here. I have Stata open on the left and then do file open on the right. So when you are using a do file, it's really important for you to comment your code to clarify what you're doing for your future self. So for instance, will you remember what you're doing in 2 years? Will you remember what you're doing in 3 years? Maybe even 5 years down the line. Maybe you have a revision for a journal article. It's really important for you to comment not only for yourself, but also for other colleagues and what you'll be doing for the purposes of this course. It's really, really easy to forget what you're doing in the future. Even weeks from now, it's very easy to look back, open your do file again, and figure out, hey, what exactly was I doing here in line 18? I don't exactly remember. And that's why it's really important for you to comment. Comments in do file look just like this. All this text right here, all this in green, these are all commented out. So that means that these are things that Stata cannot run because it notes it as a comment, so it just basically skips over it and it's just for you yourself to document. So pretend that you have a lab mate or colleague. If they're working with you, maybe for example, you send your do file over to them. Would they be able to open your do file and understand what is going on? So the point is that somebody else will be following all the commands that you've been writing, all the commands that you've been doing for your analysis, and they should be able to understand exactly what you're doing at every step. If they can't, that likely means you'll be needing a little bit more documentation and some more comments to make it clearer. So always imagine that you're somebody else and think, is this clear for somebody else that's not me who's looking at it? And can my colleague or my lab mate also look at this? So that's very important to note when you're setting up your do file. Comments are really everything. So how do you actually write a comment though? So writing comment, like I mentioned, it's all this green text right here. There's 3 different ways that you can write comments in general. So the first way is that you can use this asterisk. So you can comment out anything by just starting it with an asterisk. So for example, I can have an asterisk and you see it immediately turns green and then I'm just writing testing. And I know this is a comment because it turned green. Okay, but what if I don't want this indent? Well, I can remove it and it's still green. As long as I start the line with this asterisk, you'll be fine and it'll be green, which means it's a comment. So another way that you can write a comment is that you can add 2 of these slashes. Anything that has 2 slashes, Stata knows that this is a comment and it should be green. So if I add 2 slashes here, so the first one is not green yet, so this is not a comment. I add one more, and all of a sudden this whole line turns green. I know that I've added a comment. So that's the second way you can add a comment. The third way is to use this slash star sandwich. So that's starting your comment with a slash and an asterisk, and then you end with a slash and an asterisk. And you can use that to write out multiple lines. So for example, maybe I'll start one right here and I'll put testing out how to use the slash star sandwich method. And then I want to make sure that I end this. Right now I know that this comment is going all the way down and I don't want that. I just want this comment to end on the second line. So I need to make sure I close off this sandwich method by adding a asterisk and a star. And I can see there's a line right here that tells me, look, these two lines belong together. And that's how I closed it off. So this is the third way to comment out your do file. It doesn't matter which way you use. You can use a combination of these three methods. You can primarily use one. You can just use the other. Really, this is personal preference. Most people, when they get a little bit more advanced, try to use all three different ones depending on what you do. So for example, when I write on multiple lines, I don't want to have a asterisk on every single line. This is my preferred method because in this method, I can have a lot of different things. See, just random, I'm just putting in random letters here and we can see that, look, these are all still comments because it falls within my slash star sandwich. You can see here, this is just using the star asterisk method to use. Right here, you can see, look, this is just the double slashes method. Any of these work, it's really just personal preference, but you're welcome to use a different combination of all three. So sometimes you want to make sure that your code is legible. That means you don't just want to write text paragraph and line by line like an essay. It's really hard to read in Stata when you do something like that. So instead, to make it more readable both for yourself and the person or the team that you're working with, you're going to want to indent or add spacing wherever it's necessary, and you can add new lines. So for example, you can see right here, these are all indented because this is much easier to read as a list rather than writing it out like if they were paragraphs and you just have one sentence after another in a very messy looking essay. This is Stata, this is not writing a paper, so it's not the same thing. So make sure to try to keep it clean and clear. Again, this is personal preference about how you want to do things, but as long as it's legible in some way and organized in some way, it's fine. Another thing you can do is that you can use headers to separate sections. So for example, you can see that this is a separate header about writing comments. So I have several asterisks here. It doesn't matter how many I have, as long as it starts with the first asterisk, it'll run as a comment, it'll read it as a comment. So for example, if I only have one, it's still a comment, it's still green. If I have two, that's totally fine. But if I don't have any, all of a sudden, this is no longer a comment. So there are several things you can do for headers. For example, you can just add a whole row of asterisks. You can be creative. Sometimes I think this is not as clean to read, so I prefer doing an asterisk and then like this wavy curvy symbol in between and then ending with an asterisk. I often do an asterisk and then have a bunch of lines in the middle and then I end with this asterisk here. Again, completely up to you, personal preference, as long as it is organized and making sure that it is actually a comment, so it's green, so we know that this is a comment and Stata won't accidentally read it as some sort of code. Okay, but what happens if it's actually not a comment? Like, what's the big deal? Why do I have to comment it out? Well, first of all, let's see, this is no longer green, so we know that this isn't a comment. And then if I actually run this, so I'm going to run this in Stata like a code, what happens? It says command what is unrecognized. That's because this first code is usually our command right here. This what is being read as a command and it has no idea what this code is because it's not a command at all. What is not a command? So if you have a comment and you're not commenting it out, Stata is going to read it differently. It's going to read it as if it were a real command that you're trying to run, and then it's not going to run correctly. So what are we going to do to make sure that this gets commented out? Well, we can add an asterisk, and all of a sudden, everything is green. Okay, we can add 2 dashes, and that'll work. Or we can also just use the slash star sandwich method. Okay, so there are several keyboard shortcuts just to know off the bat. This is when you're working in your do file. You won't need it for this video, but you will need it for every other video and for your own work. So just making sure that you know this. For Mac, to run any line of code, so for example, you just saw me run this code. it's not really a code. This was just a test, but you just saw me run this. So this button right here is execute selection. That means I'm going to run something. But we don't always want to go back and select this all the time. Instead, you should always be using your keyboard shortcut. So instead of clicking this button all the time, we're going to use our keyboard shortcuts. So that means we're going to use Command Shift D if you have a Mac. So just in that order, you click Command Shift D. If you are using a Windows computer, it's only going to be Control D, just two buttons. And you're going to click Control first and then D. And if you're in a Porto uses Windows, so you're also going to use Control D for a Porto. And just be aware that if you're using a Mac and a Windows, it's going to be slightly different. For example, like the directions of the slash. I am using a Mac right now, so my slashes might look a little bit different for some things than for if you're using a Windows computer or for a Porto. Okay, so some general notes just about learning Stata and just learning it well. So this is the do file, and it's really made for you. You can see that I have a lot of green text here. This is for you, and it's your number one resource to refer to it later when you need it. There's something called a help command in Stata. It tells you about a command, for example, what the syntax is, what the options are, what the sample code is. I'll show you more later, but just know that there does exist a help command in Stata. You really just type help and then whatever you need help with. Also, Google is a really, really good resource for learning Stata. There are a lot of smart people in this world that most likely have answers to your questions. So really, doing a quick Google search will always be really worth your time. Another really great resource is the Stata List forums. So you can go on this website right here, statalist.com/forums. And it's a really good place where Stata experts answers questions that people post. So likely a question that you have was probably already posted on the Stata List. So that's also a really great place to look at when you have questions. And then lastly for this section, really just try to invest your time. Use Stata as much as possible. You really just want to get a lot of practice and a lot of consistency, and you will become very good very fast. So for example, maybe you're doing Control D and you're like, why is this taking so long? Why can't I just click this? Once you do this a couple times, you will understand and you'll feel how much faster and more efficient it is to just run Control D instead of just going to this button, pressing it every time. Okay, so let's try setting up our own do files. So first things first, you're going to want to open up Stata. So if you have Stata on your computer, you're going to launch Stata on your computer simply just by double clicking it. Or if you have a Porto, make sure you get set up in a Porto. I have a separate video if you haven't seen that yet. For me, I just look it up on my computer. I see Stata right here, and then I just open that up. So once you open up Stata, you're going to open a new do file for yourself by clicking on the do file icon in the top row of Stata. So this is Stata. Right here, it says do file, and it says new do file editor. I'm just going to click on this icon it looks like a piece of paper with a pencil on it. I'm going to click on it, and what it does is it opens a blank page of do file, and this is where you'll be getting started. Okay, so once you do that, you're going to start learning and just practicing setting up your do file using the comments and just organizing your do file the way that I did. So I almost always include my name, if it's for course, what class and what week it is. And very importantly, what is the purpose of your do file? Why are you making that do file? Is it maybe for a week 1 problem set? Or maybe you're cleaning data, or you're making descriptive table for research question number 1 if you're doing your own work. So always label your do file, make sure you date it, and then try adding some comments in your do file using all the 3 ways that I mentioned earlier. So for example, your do file could have something that looks a little bit like this. You don't have to use the specific /* method. You can use all slashes, you can use all asterisks, you can use a combination of whatever you want that you think is aesthetically pleasing, as long as it's clean and it looks like a comment. So then I set it up with the title of the course, when the course is, my name, and then whatever date it'll be, and then the purpose for this do file. So for example, what you can do is you can maybe do an asterisk, and then maybe you like the wavy lines. So let's do asterisk and wavy line. I always do it all the way until, oops, I went too far, until this line right here. And then I'm gonna get started. So I can do it this way. I can do 2 slashes and say, my name is Tiffany, or you can also do 1 asterisk, 2 asterisks, 3 asterisks, it doesn't matter. You can call yourself your programmer, for example. We're gonna make sure we want the date. So today's date, month, day, and the year. And then very importantly, what is the purpose of this do file? So I'm gonna put making a video to set up do files for stats courses at UCI. And then I just like to close it off. So maybe I just want to do the same thing here. So I'm just going to copy and paste that down here. I can add indents if I want. So for example, I can add indents over here if I prefer to have indents. I can also write more notes to myself if I want to write more notes. So for example, I can write note, maybe this do file was updated on May 11th, 2026 by adding new data set and merging in old data set, or something like that, just for example. But this is what you should be doing. Try using a different combination of commenting methods. For example, the double slash, the asterisk, and we didn't use the sandwich star slash method here, but you can also do that. And just play around, practice, have fun. Okay. And then when you're done adding your comments, make sure you just hit save. So save is just up here. I'm just going to save it, and it's going to ask me to name it and then save it. Make sure you save it in the appropriate folder for a class. I'm not going to save this one because it's just my test one, so I'm going to make sure I save this one, the one I'm actually working in. And a good rule of thumb is just to hit save. Just every time you're working on it, you don't always wait till the end. You might be caught in Stata for a very long time, maybe a few hours, and you don't want to just risk it all and press save. Just like when you're writing a paper, it's the same idea. Save your work throughout. And then lastly, just to end with some other general comments. So you will always set up your do file in this way, and you're always going to make sure that you're commenting clearly and organizing everything as clear as possible, whether or not it's for this class, whether or not it's for a problem set, maybe it's for your GSR work with your faculty member or your advisor, or it's for your own research. Basically, staying organized and labeling everything will help you so much, and it will save you enormously down the road. So really try practicing it now. Promise you it will pay off. And then just don't forget, really you should be having fun with it. Stata can sometimes feel like a challenge to learn when you're just starting off, but this is really just the fun part. And you should be having fun and just trying to keep an open mind about learning. Try different methods. See, maybe you like doing this. Just try different things and have fun with it. Mess around, because right now there's really no stakes here if you make a mistake. So just try. And then just to final remember, hit save again. Before we finish, let's always hit save. And then we're going to continue working on this do file later. All right, thank you everybody, and that's it for today.